much. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Watch Your Eyes here on Unizik 94.1 FM. Now, Sheryl Sandberg once said that we need women at all levels, including the top, to change the dynamic, reshape the conversation, to make sure women's voices are heard and heeded, not overlooked and ignored. And on today's program, we will be looking at the visibility of the Nigerian woman in an ever-changing world, following the recent report published by the United Nations Development Programme on Women Empowerment. I am Vincent Ede, and we have as our guest in the studio who will be discussing this with us, Ms. Chineze Obianyo, the Chairperson, International Federation of Women Lawyers, Anambra State Branch. Welcome to the program, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Vincent.
All right, let's find out from you first of all, ma'am. This report that was released by the UNDP on the 22nd of this month, that women are the most marginalized group globally. Do you quite agree with them?
I agree. I agree because you talk about democracy, you talk about fundamental rights, you talk about human rights. I found out that those rights which we recognized, there are so many plethora of rights recognized worldwide by the United Nations. I found that those rights are not being implemented, they are not recognized, they are not put into practice. When you talk about gender inequality, gender discrimination, when you talk about women being not in a position to have the same thing the men would have, you see that there's need for that report, which makes a flashback on what the status is today and what should be. Lack of finance to prepare the women to campaign, to be able to vie for position is one of the incapacities they suffer. Even when you give them affirmative action of 50-50, and the woman is not in a position to print posters, to pay lobby within the party, she's still incapacitated. Then you find that you have the minority gender group that have a zero provision. That is, the women are poorer than the men because the job society is controlled by the men. So even when you say, I've given this to you, they are not in a position to execute it because the society is still a man's society. So there is need for us to have a flashback on what we are or how we stand, and then look forward to what should be, which is being able to put up a government where equal rights are reserved, where equal rights are recognized, and you're able to put into implementation in the laws, in the policies, in the system, the two sides of the sexes, being able to act according to the Constitution. So there is need for us to look back. How do we stand now? How do we stand many years back? There is no doubt that there has been some measure of progress. Fine, but we haven't gone far at all. In some countries outside the world, you still have a lot of women that are illiterate. You still have a lot of women that are not even in a position to secure a good job. You still have a lot of women who are being told that their duty is just to mind the home, give back to children, focus on this, dance, and the men will give them money. This is channeling their attention to the wrong part, while the men consume their own percentage and consume the women's percentage in the society. A society where the woman is not able to make an input in workforce, make an input in the policy. That particular gender is suffering. So I think there is need for us to look at how we stood yesterday, how we stand today, and how the future will be for the woman of today.
All right, now before we look at some other details that I imagined from this report on the 22nd, now you just made mention of the women that are still illiterate in some countries,
yes,
and that have not been given some opportunities or access to some positions and the rest of them. Now, looking at it this way, is it the fault of the society, or should the women also partake in the blame?
The women will not partake in the blame because pre-medieval times, they've been mostly in Africa. I'll give you a rundown now. Before the Beijing conference, it was zero. At the Beijing conference in 1995, we had 30% affirmative representation of women in government and the other society. By 2000, we realized that we are still having a lot of drawback, that we have not been able to get there. Some of the countries were able to move up to that 30-35%. In Rwanda, we are talking now about 49% of representation of women. But you find out that the women struggle to get there. We have a lot of, in South Africa, Rwanda, Uganda, you have more women in political positions, even out having an outstanding impact globally, where you don't have it even as much as in Europe and other places. But you find out that in those places, there has been a struggle.
What contributes specifically to this?
Like Rwanda, after the genocide and all that experience, the effort of the women to rise, because almost you had more population of the women and all that, now gave rise for that struggle. It didn't come to them naturally. I hope you understand what I'm saying. It didn't come to them naturally. So if you are in an environment, let's bring it down to our home country. You find out that before the colonial system and all that, women dressed with wrapper and their breast was open and they were properly dressed. As they moved up and the colonial people came up, it now had their wrapper and then something to tie on their breast. That is the traditional way of dressing up. Now with time, they now started clothing themselves with the colonial influence and all that. But you still realize that we still had our cultures, apart from the ones the white men eradicated as obnoxious to us. We still had a lot of things we are doing that are wrong. You see a woman, a couple or a family going for a burial, and you see 10 cartons of beer being carried, 5 tubers of maybe other things that are heavy, maybe 5 crates of mineral, and all the young youths will be walking energetically with nothing in their hands, and you see the women carrying these cartons of beer on their head. So you see that this is the culture they have been able to present. If we now have to give orientation that these cultures have to be changed, which I know is not the women that will change it, we first have, like FIDA in our outreaches, we meet the traditional rulers, we meet the PGs, we address the women during outreaches, we address them through the clergy, because the clergy has a duty which cuts across many members. So we make use of the clergy most times now by going to the churches, calling them for clergy workshops whenever we have the grants to sponsor it. They reach out to these people faster and be in a position to talk to the population of that community to change some of these norms. So with that, you find out that the people who have the orientation, the courage to act as you have advised them. You might come to a community where, like in FIDA right now, we have a lot of cases of women, widows. Once your husband dies, you lose the gloom of life. You lose all that benefits you. Your house is taken over from your brothers, by your brother's husband's brother and all that. So you find yourself in a position where you can't speak. So I wouldn't say that the problem we're having is with the woman. The problem we are having is that the men folk use their physical force to challenge the rights of these women, to intimidate them, to put them in a pinhole where they cannot exercise their free will. So it will take the law, it will take the courts, it will take everybody to be on that campaign. And that's why we are working on the Violence Against Persons Act, the VAP Act, which tells you that so many things we do is violence. Even when people don't realize that it's violence, it's violence. When you induce another person to do something that is detrimental to him or her, it's violence. So the women are not to blame at all.
Now the Dr. G. Dara described culture as a philosophical touchstone in every development.
Yes.
And you just spoke about culture having a kind of some sort of fault in it.
Yes.
Now the fault is in the culture, is in the tenet itself, or in its application?
Culture, with my own recognition, is an endeavor which practiced over time becomes culture. The word culture derives its formation from the word cult, which is an endeavor. So when a particular group of people have striven towards an endeavor over space and time within a particular place, within a geographical place and a particular period, it becomes culture. You understand what I'm saying? That's why you gear and say secret cult. What it means that there is an endeavor by a group of people which is hidden to the public. So the word culture is a derivation from the word cult. So when you now talk about culture, is a way of life accepted over time, and things gave rise to it. Know that when we talk about our culture in Africa, we're talking about so many years back, before the white men came. What gave rise to those things some of them are so historic that we can't even go into them in detail. Look at the markets. Let me give you an example of the markets. The markets you see today, each market has a story how it started. It's not just that the people gathered together and started selling. The people in that community consciously provided a market. And in some of those things, they even revert, before going on into, they even revert traditionally to their gods, to the deities they worshipped, before they took off as a market. So when you look at that, you find out that certain things were done with the recognition they had at that time. Some of them will say, okay, we recognize this as our Lucy, our God. And then that a woman must do so and so, and a woman must do so and so. It becomes the way of life of those people. There are some experiences which you watch in some of these home videos, where a woman is being sacrificed for one thing or the other, and the cost comes to that people. And some other events unfold, and you say that these people behave in this manner or behave in that manner, which may be obnoxious, which may be repugnant. So with the Christendom coming in, some were changed, some were still held bound. But what you find that is that the people then, because they didn't know the Almighty whom we serve today, they recognized the small gods who are still gods, but in a smaller perspective, because these gods recognize the bigger God. Now, they recognize him and put in all their conviction in it. So when you tell them, don't do this, even when you tell the woman, that's when you ask the question, are the women to blame? If you hold it tenaciously from pre-Mavela times, you can say yes, in the sense that they didn't know any other word. And when you go against this, you know that the gods will strike. And the justice of those gods, I will call them beings, I call them elemental beings, because they exist. It's not as if there is a wishful thinking. But they are elementals who are close to nature. Because when you realize, when we were recognizing these deities, we were nearer to nature. You have a high priest who will tell you the deity has spoken, and his whole life is entrusted to that high priest. If he should pass on, the kingdom is left bare without any position. Nobody canvasses for it till it's entrusted upon another person, and you don't vie for it as an election. You will see it manifest in another person's life. So the things there, the events unfolded in such a manner that the people at that particular point in time had what you could call conviction, because they experienced it. It was living to them. That is why when you go to Nteje market today to say you want to buy yam, if you go on the normal market day, you will meet people selling and you will buy. If you go the day it is not market day, you will meet all their goods in the market. And nobody ever dares to pick a tuber of yam and runs away, because he knows what will happen to him. There is their conviction. So likewise, when we had those customs that was not recognizing the women fold the way they should be, there was that innate belief that this is where they should be. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Till the Western influence now came in and started driving those belief systems that were repugnant to natural justice. I hope you understand. I'm trying to draw the analogy between their conviction in what they were doing and whether it is justified. Some were justified and they were left the way they were, but some were not. But the human beings involved there nurtured every conviction in everything they did. That's why you will say that when you ask an man a question, if he should tell a lie, then he knows the consequences. And we have the idiom that says that if your age mates took title, you cannot pick what is on the floor. There are consequences that came around with it. So the people then vibrated with conviction. But today, the Christendom we have today lacks conviction. And that's why you will go to the churches for a service and you say you want to go and give offering. And somebody is going with her handbag, because when she leaves it on the seat and comes back, her phone is stolen. Where lies the conviction? So the women then, they were doing the things that were asked to do, subservient to the man, because that was their conviction. That was the culture that was placed around them. And because every other thing which they did and served with the small strikes them when they do things wrong. So even the ones they believed wrongly, they still held to it as conviction. It took the influence of the colonial of the white man to come in and bring in the Christendom, which the white man had recognition of, but the black man did not have recognition of it. So with the Western world and the influence coming in and government coming in, Nigeria being amalgamated and all that, and we had a government, it's now brushing aside the customary beliefs we had, the standard of living we had, which was primeval, which was obnoxious, and letting the women know, letting the men who were the ones, who are the dominant factors, who held the power in the society, to let go of that which belonged to the woman. So it's something that we have to do with laws. We have to propagate laws. We have to educate them. We have to put in stakeholders. We have to put in structures that will checkmate the abuse of this predominance of exercise of power by the men.
So you're saying that over time our culture has given some certain group of people higher power than
yes,
the other?
It did.
Okay.
Yes, it did, because the woman was just there to have children. That's why today we fight female genital mutilation. This is something that started before.
We'll still come to that.
Yeah, we have early marriage, which is an abuse. A girl in the north at 12 years is already married, or even at 4. So it is a custom which is practiced over time. You don't even choose your spouse. Your parents choose your spouse for you. So realize your right, realize your power, realize your free will. None. And you've been educated, you've been told that your duty is just to go and rear children and look after the man. You've been given the belief that you can be 10 women to 1 man.
Alright, we'll still look at
so you'll find out that there's a lot of predominance of the male folk on the woman, on the women, and the woman, which should be the opposite. The woman should be the one dominating, but not in the manner you people conceive it to be. I agree that we have to be there in the government, we have to talk, we have to be there to implement laws, we have to be there to make sure that our rights are preserved. Yes, but the woman is the queen of the home. And you start well from the home. If the home is in order, if the society is in order, if the community is in order, the nation will be in order. So each mother holds, every human being came to this earth through the mother. So each mother has a sacred, each child is a sacred gift to the right mother. So when you now hold on to your children, the cradle you have, and nurture them with the right orientation which you already have, you'll be able to put them in a society where they will be useful to the society and give you back good returns. So if we have that projecting from every home and coming out in a particular community, you find that the community is in order. You will get to the point where before, when you go to the market and forgot something, if you go back there, you will meet it. But today is not the case. I was watching a movie where they said somebody was picking pockets. He called the road his office. So what we are saying is that the women coming forward is not just being in a position to vie political positions, but being able to be recognized that they have a lot to do. They have a lot to give, which starts from the home. No human being can talk without making reference to his mother. Not one. So if that is what it is, how much more what they can do when they begin to mother this environment.
Alright, now before again we look at some of the details emerging from this report that said that there is a systematic discrimination of women in the globe. And from the word systematic, can you please just, throw more light on it or shed more light on that? Would it be that the discrimination varies from country to country, or there is a kind of a level in the discrimination?
There is systematic discrimination because when people are even given opportunities, you find out that the opportunity is zero. You asked them, okay, women can go to school. They can go to school, fine. After going to school, you find out that the quality of the education you gave them is zero. Because I've agreed, okay, bring them in. How do you now bring them in? Like I made a real reference. I said, you tell me, okay, affirmative action, maybe this country says 10 or 20. and the woman, that's for them to be able to buy posts and all that in the government, fine. And the woman lacks the opportunity to earn a living to do the campaign he needs, to win a seat in the political party which she belongs. Is that not systematic discrimination? I hope you understand what I'm saying. You talk about systematic discrimination, you look at the banks. A, B, C are a marketing department. A, B, C are men. D, E are women. And you give them 10 million target each to go and raise. The men fold will go to the lobby, go to the beer parlors and all that, and sit across these people that are billionaires. Run to them in their companies. First, the manager of the company is a man, the PA is a man, the owner of the company is a man, and he starts to wade through, maybe even pay those people that are working under to convince their boss to come and open an account. Can the woman whom you've given the same equivalent to raise 10 million, there are 5 of them, I said 3 are men, 2 are women, can these 2 be able to penetrate this same Father Christmas that these 2 people have gone to? The answer is no. If they will, there is a clause that their body might be demanded. She will not be in a position to lobby the PA. She will not be in the position to lobby the manager of the company. But okay, you want to see her boss, fine. If she gets the number to the boss will tell him where to meet her. Take it or leave it, my dear, if you want it. He wouldn't demand that from ABC. They are both from the same banks, from the young male folks. He wouldn't. He will assist him with ease. We once had an intention to run a conference which we termed Women in Business. If a man goes to obtain 10 million naira loan and a woman goes to obtain it, the man gets it that day immediately.
But there's this notion that people normally has that the woman is more favored than the men, folks, in the society. There
are packages attached to it. I'm not saying that the man cannot believe in you.
So there's an implicit,
but there is this tendency that you are going to face this aspect of it. Especially if you are starting if you are starting first. If you are just a young girl, okay, just taking off.
You're still beginning.
You are more exposed to those advances than maybe when you have made it and then the man knows that, oh, this person, I cannot talk to her anyhow and all that. And then sees your what? Maybe you already have a network of millions, which he recognizes instantly and knows that it's business simplicity. But whether the women are exposed to those dangers, they are.
Well, most times it's believed that women are the people who,
So it's this systematic discrimination. Okay. Because the society favors the man in getting those things easily. Okay. You have been exposing him, even these remarks are not too favorable. A woman who feels decent within and outside feels bad after you have sent out those thoughts and those remarks. Whether you were able to succeed is immaterial. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Take it for example when you walk into the main market here. How the businessmen sitting there drag your hands. They don't drag the hands of the man. Come and buy things from us. They don't push you around because he knows he can get a big blow from the person he's pulling. It's mostly on the women. So when we talk about systematic discrimination in all circumstances now, I accept that there is no discrimination, but underneath you hear from me that is systematic because it's not open. That is saying discrimination that is not obvious, in which you will say, oh, the woman has disqualified herself. I hope you understand what I'm saying. So it's an inward rejection of the women from the men. That is the systematic discrimination, because they are no longer coming out to say, I don't agree with you. No, we are fighting this. They mustn't have this affirmative action. But they say, yes, we do. Then you go under and make sure that things are not done properly. That is systematic discrimination.
All right.
And still putting us where we are before we started.
All right. Now, before we look at the concept of feminism in this contest, I would like you also to tell us, how would you rate the visibility of a Nigerian woman from the instances you've given, where we were and where we are now? How would you rate the visibility?
We are still behind because South Africa is far ahead of us. South Africa is lobbying for 50-50. But after the Commonwealth Forum, which was held in Nigeria, the proposal was accepted, and because everybody was urged, the government, the parastatals, to make sure that women are allowed to come in every facet of the society. Give the women opportunity to be heard, opportunity to air their views, opportunity to take part in everything that men do in all aspects of the government. Look at the judiciary, the parliament, the executive, and also in the corporate world. So the visibility we are talking about is giving the women the opportunity to be heard, giving the women the opportunity to be seen. Most of us are not being seen, and we're not in a position to give our best. I hope you understand what I'm saying. We're not in a position to give our best. If given the opportunity, you'll be able to assess whether this person can do it well. Check in your homes and know what is the contributory factor of the women in your home. I don't think there's any family that doesn't have a woman. Even if where you have all boys, you must have your aunts and cousins and all that. And you know their impact. So the visibility of Nigerian women must go round in everything. In the churches, in the companies, in our private sector, everywhere. We must give women the opportunity to be heard, the opportunity to be seen, the opportunity to serve. That's what we are asking for. Because before now, it was invisibility, which is carried out through the discrimination. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Yes. We are talking about visibility now because the status of the woman of today is invisible. So to project and cure that error, we are not talking about visibility.
Alright, again, let's look at the concept feminism. What are your thoughts on feminism? What are your perception of feminism? It's a prevalent factor now in the society. Women are craving for feminism. Let's find out your thoughts about feminism.
My thought about feminism is not whatever any man can do, a woman can do it. That's not feminism. My thoughts about feminism borders more on why is the word, what is female? What does the word female mean? You have to take it back from there. If you take it back from there and understand the concept of what it is a gender, sex, which is finer than the male sex. And why is it finer? Because it has the spiritual embodiment to constantly receive more than the man in all circumstances. So if you take it from all perspectives, feminism should be adapted to relate and give a proper concept of what womanhood should stand. I think that's the best word to look at it. Womanhood. And what does womanhood stand for? A bridge for man in the creation. A bridge between man and the spiritual world. So when we are looking at feminism, it's not a case of a man is wearing trousers and should wear trousers. No. It's a case of each time a man looks at you, you should be able to receive strength. You should be able to be ennobled in seeing you. That is the true feminism. The true feminism is not that I can box better than you. I could be a Tyson. I could be a Muhammad Ali. That's not feminism. Feminism is that there is something embodied in woman which she should at all times put into creation. live an exemplary life, disclosing it, which everybody sees. So the high peak of feminism is that a woman in any environment graces the environment, ennobles the environment.
Her impact is felt.
Her impact is felt. One look at her and no ugly thought form can come from you. A nation where you don't have a woman who you can revere, that nation is doomed for destruction. So feminism, you cannot appreciate feminism without looking at the word woman and womanhood. And womanhood is a concept that is living in creation. It's a concept that is and will always be. So our duty now is to know, what is my task as a woman? What is the expectations required to live up to the noble task of womanhood?
All right, at this point, we have to thank you very much for your time with us, Ms. Chineze Obianyo. She is the chairperson, International Federation of Women Lawyers, Anambra State Chapter. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Vincent.
That's the size of our package for today. Join us again for another interesting edition.